Hi, I'm Katie Mahalic, and today we're talking with Emily Dinova about her new book, The Antagonist. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Katie. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. So, how did you come to write this particular novel?
So, this particular novel was a quarantine novel. I think the lack of having work, having things to do, and I think a lot of people can probably relate to this, felt like they were left alone with their thoughts.
Mhm.
And I have some pretty dark thoughts. And so, I weighed my options in terms of how I wanted to deal with trauma that remained unprocessed in my life. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to write a book, and that will be my catharsis.
Okay, so from a technical standpoint, this novel is it's very cleverly structured. All writers know a story should have a protagonist and an antagonist, but in this story, those roles shift at midpoint, right? So you have this title, the antagonist, but it can apply to either one of the main characters depending on which half of the story you're in. So I'm curious how you came up with that plot device.
I had been going to therapy for, at that point, when I wrote the novel, about 2 years. I had a good amount of knowledge that I felt like I wanted to explore in myself, right? When we go into a therapeutic frame of psychoanalysis, the idea when you lay down on the couch is that you're able to regress, you're able to go backwards, you're able to see things from the past in a way. And I feel like that is sort of what I wanted to, in hindsight, wanted to convey between this back and forth movement that, we have this very linear structure beginning and everything seems normal and everything seems fine. And this
Mhm.
is how it goes,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
and we believe this truth that this is the protagonist. And so when we suddenly have this backward structuring, it's the structure works as a metaphor in itself
Mhm.
for how we are moving, how we are uncovering. And so that really is what gets into my readers or victims psyche. So that's when I hook them. That's when they're like, wait, what's going on? Wait, this isn't how it's supposed to be.
I mean, we know this novel, it's written, it's so visceral, right? How did you, get through those excruciating areas of the book? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I guess I prepared myself. I outlined, I knew where the book was going to go eventually because I have already been there. For me, it was not, a recreation, I guess more of a retelling or a reimagining. But yes, there are certainly parts of it that are things that have happened to me in my life. And I'm open and honest about that because I don't want anyone to interpret my work as being exploitative in some way. I feel very strongly about that, and I feel very strongly about supporting victims, any kind.
And with the antagonist, what do you feel compelled to explore?
I think that we kind of get lost in the idea that, people are just, face value or what they say or what they do or what labels we put on them, right? Or like what label society puts on them. And people are very much in their containers. But when you like actually explore an individual, there's so many facets. And I guess the novel begs the question, do we ever really know anyone? And so I really wanted to explore that because I think that there's no such thing as normal. And I think everybody has the ability to remain unknown and I don't know, it makes it very personal on a lot of levels, I suppose.
Well, that's funny that you say that because my next question was, how personal is this story for
It is and it isn't. It's personal from the sense of what it is at its core, like the trauma the traumatic event that ultimately is the reason that I wrote the novel. It's really a novel that I feel like I wrote for myself in a lot of
you?
ways. And in a lot of other ways, I feel like putting it out there is different than writing it. It has a different message. It has a different meaning. It's not for me. It's for all
Mm.
of you.
How tough was it to do that? How tough was it to write that way?
I just, I guess my organizational skills helped me get through it because I had a very specific thing that I needed to focus on, which was the timeline based on how the novel is structured. So I really didn't let myself go there until I had to write that chunk of the book, which is a slow descent. So I feel like the gradual progression, when you're reading it, it all happens a lot faster. But
Mhm.
writing it, I really was able to take myself back through time and really kind of take it at my own pace. And I think that gave me a sense of control over things that had happened to me that in real life I hadn't had control over. And so writing it gave me the power to take it back as mine.
That's really powerful. So yes, okay. We're talking about the guts of where the story and the novel came from, and how much is fiction?
No, I would say most it is a work of fiction for
Okay.
sure. I mean, there are facets of real life, but yeah, it's a revenge tale. It's
Okay.
so I guess I was vague earlier, but I'll clarify because I feel like it really pertains to the question. So I thought strongly during lockdown while I had time about taking the man who abused me when I was a child to court. I thought about doing that. And I thought that that would drag my family through something, that would drag me through something, that would be a long, arduous battle. And I have been fighting my whole life, it feels like, to not fight more. Like I don't want to fight. But I do. And so, in my way, I'm like, how can I not, you know, take all of this time and energy to go back to a place and do this thing when I can just write a story instead. And
Mhm.
that will be my way to release it, and not to say that I don't I I have taken the responsibility off of myself
Mm.
to be responsible for someone else's life and healing and anything that they go through. So for me, I just felt like this was the way I could deal with it. This is as brave as I can be. And for me, that's good enough.
And it's so brave. And I think many people that have gone through various experiences of various kinds of abuse in childhood um, really deserve to know that they don't owe anybody anything. And whatever place they can find relief and healing, it takes enough bravery to do that on your own as it is. And so I think your writing this novel was a wonderful way to, take back some power for yourself that you could feel and taste. And I hope, the readers recognize that too, because I think many people can relate to what's on the pages. Um,
Thank you for
yeah,
saying that. And
yeah.
it is, I mean, ultimately, like though it is this, revenge tale, there is a message that like, healing is possible. There is hope, like things aren't always so dark. We have I spoke about having dark impulses and having dark thoughts, but like we also have really good thoughts and we do really good things as humans too. So it's not all awful. And when you have people in your life who, lift you up and support you the way I have been lifted up and supported by the people in my life I'm very blessed to have. It makes it possible. And I think the message is, anybody can heal if they want to face themselves. And that is the hardest thing, I think.
With, an understanding that you were going through therapy, you're also writing this novel. Was there a lot of healing involved with writing the novel?
The most healing part of it has been getting positive reviews about it, hearing people say that it didn't, terrorize them. I mean, even if it did, like they got the message, and it isn't to terrorize, though some of my marketing is a little intense, but the novel itself has a much deeper meaning to it.
Well, I want to know what you want people to take away from this novel.
I don't know. I really didn't have a plan with this. I didn't think this book would ever be published. Again, I wrote it really just in a revenge, COVID lockdown rage. I my hope is that people will read it and they will feel empowered to speak out, that they will, take care of themselves and their health and stop feeling guilt and stop feeling shame and feeling like being a victim or experiencing a horrible thing makes you somehow less or weak or that it's some kind of negative connotation. It isn't. It's part of who you are. All survivors, I feel like, know that, feel that, like no matter what you've survived, like it's a part of who you are, and accepting that and accepting yourself are the greatest gifts that you can give yourself, because life's too short, man. It's too short.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and telling us a little more about, where you pulled so much of this story from, and how brave you were to share it is really what I heard through this conversation. And I'm so happy to talk to you about it.
Thanks, Katie. I appreciate you, and this is always humbling, and I just really appreciate your amazing energy, and you always make me feel so comfortable and safe when I'm on your show. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining Emily and I today for this conversation. You can find Emily Dinova's new book, The Antagonist, at henrygraypublishing.com, or ask for it at your favorite neighborhood bookstore. Until next time, keep reading, everyone.